Okay, that was cool. That was nice. I got to say, I'm not quite a fan of metal, but I actually found that listenable. So
Good,
if
good.
that's probably about the highest praise I can make for a metal song. Now, you said this is one of the songs you want to take forward through your recording campaign. And how was this recorded then, and what was missing in it?
Okay, so basically what happened is I recorded the album in this room, and we put it out there. And, people have been enjoying it. People have been downloading it. People have been putting it on their YouTube videos, which has been great. So we sat down with, we have a series of advisors who, we're very fortunate in the sense that we know a bunch of people who've been through the industry. They've played in some pretty big bands. The area that I live in, the Bay Area, is just wonderful for metal. So a lot of my favorite bands actually, they're based locally. So we know a lot of people who've been through the industry, and people who really like the idea of what we're doing in Severed Fifth, in terms of the new music economy and the music that we're doing. Mm-hmm. We sat down with one of these guys, and he said, can I take you for a beer? I was like, okay, slightly ominous. Mm-hmm. We all went out after a rehearsal, and he said, look, I love you guys. I love the music that you're doing. He said, I think they're great tunes. You have a great unity in the band. Like, the four of you are a great unit. And there's a great opportunity here, and I think you've got a real shot at making this happen. But I got to be honest with you. You got a great sounding demo, but not necessarily a great sounding album. He said, what you did with the resources that you've got is wonderful. He said, but you need to have that big, rich drum sound in there. You need to have the big thumping bass sound. You need to have it mixed by someone who's mixed metal bands before. Mm-hmm. You need to have a recording engineer, when you're doing your vocals, who's going to say, do it again, do it again, do it again, until you get the best possible performance. And he was like, he said, again, what you've got right now, given the resources you had, is excellent. He said, but if you were to get in the studio and record this professionally, he said, it'll do the music justice.
So how was this recorded if it wasn't in a studio? Because it sounded kind of studio-ish to me, but that's because I'm not paying attention to the things you're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, I basically built a home studio in my house.
Okay.
So it's a PC with a FireWire recording surface. I'm using Cubase and a bunch of virtual instruments in terms, like, for example, I play the drums myself physically, but I actually map what I play on my drum kit to pre-recorded sounds. It sounds like a professionally recorded kit, but it still doesn't sound like an actual kit that's been recorded in a specific.
So those noises are all synthetic, based on like a MIDI track or something that you would play into.
Yeah. So what I do is, when I play the drums, I've got an electronic kit, but I play it like a normal drum kit. So mm-hmm. everything you hear in the album is me playing. But what happens is, when I hit, for example, the snare pad, mm-hmm. it actually triggers a pre-recorded snare drum sound. So whenever I hit the drum, it basically it plays the pre-recorded sound, mm-hmm. Which is good. But you don't get things like the sound of the room and the sound of the different drums resonating with each other and things like that. And that's what you get with a professional recording. I recorded all the guitars in here. I recorded all the bass, did the vocals myself, and I mixed it myself. And in fact, Dan on the show, Dan mastered it.
Dan Lynch, for those following along. Okay.
Yeah. So so it's very much of a homebrew recording, and like this guy said, you need to have somebody who's pushing you. You need to have somebody who's going to say, who's a independent set of ears. Who's going to say, you know what, that was a good take, but do it again.
And I just want to point out, though, that what you did with this cut already is something that maybe 15 years ago would have been impossible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wanted to do this. When I first got into music, when I was 16, I first started playing in a metal band. I wanted to do this. I started hearing about people using their computers to record on, because back then it was all tape. Mm-hmm. But now you can do it. I mean, the studio setup that I've got here cost me about $4,000. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, and it's a pretty comprehensive setup. So, so basically, we had that conversation with him, and he gave us that frank and honest feedback. But it was nice that his feedback, even though he felt like the demo wasn't really cutting it, he said, the reason why is because he really believes the music is so strong. So we tuned it for a little while. We talked to some other advisors to the band, talked to our friends and family, And we were like, you know what? If we're going to do this right, if we're going to go out there and change how the industry works, then we need a professional recording. It needs to stand up to the newest Iron Maiden, the newest Megadeth, the newest Slayer album. It needs to be, you know, the kind of quality that you'd hear in the radio, and you wouldn't think, that's a band that gives their music away for free.
Right,
You know?
right. It should blend in with everybody else. Yes.
Yeah, in the same way that for Linux to compete, it needs to compete with the other operating systems in the world. So anyway, you know, but I started doing some digging around to see how much it was going to cost. It's going to cost about $5,000. No, we don't have $5,000 knocking around. So what I've done is I kicked out a Severed Fifth recording campaign, and the basic premise is we're asking our community that's formed around the band already to contribute to contribute what they can to help record the album. So you know, I kicked this off last week, towards the end of last week, and earlier last week. And you know, people can just go to severedfifth.com/pay, and they can pay with PayPal, just with a credit card. You know, and we've got some incentives, you know. So basically, everybody who contributes, they get their name in the album liner notes. And you know, when we release it, for people who contribute $50 or more, we send them a signed CD, a signed photo of the band and a CD copy of the demo that we've got already. Mm-hmm. You know, so we've had like 4 or 5 people contribute $50 or more. For people who contribute $100, we'll send them a limited edition T-shirt and the photo and the CD. $200, you know, we'll put their name in the actual new album and send them a numbered copy. And for $300, we'll dedicate a song to them at a show. So these are kind of incentives to help people to do this. So the way I've been presenting this is, you know, if you believe that the idea of Severed Fifth and what we're trying to do here in terms of trying to inspire change in the music industry, which is, you know, into a free culture way of doing things. And, you know, if you can support us, then that's great, because it's only 500 people to sponsor $10, and we're already there. So that's basically the plan.
Now this seems a little like it's a bootstrapping step, I presume, because hopefully you'd have enough income from the professional cut then to hopefully bankroll the next album you want to do professionally again. So is this kind of a plan going to have to be repeated by every band that wants to do this?
Well, that's part of the experiment. Is I think it depends on what you want to do. So I think that for us to see if the experiment's going to work, we need to bankroll it in this way. Mm-hmm. But there's no reason why bands couldn't do this in the future as well. So, you know, so you get out there. The way I imagine it's going to work for bands is, you know, you do what we did. You record a demo, and you put it out there, and you play a load of shows, and people start enjoying your music, and then people start contributing for you to go out there and record an album. And you know, the money that people contribute might not necessarily cover everything, but it might cover, you know, 2 or 3 days of recording time. And then you go out there, and then with that release, that then opens up further opportunities for you to play more shows and to sell more T-shirts at shows and to take some ticket sales, which then generates revenue that you can then invest in further recordings. So it is very much of I think a lot of this is teaching bands how to be smart with money as well. Is, you know, making sure that you invest what small resources you do have wisely into things. So, for example, the first thing I spent money on was T-shirts, because if I buy a stack of T-shirts and they're $3 or $4 a T-shirt, then we can sell them for $10. That brings in $5 or $6 a T-shirt, and you know, it doesn't take long before you've paid off the lion's share of the T-shirts, and then you're into pure profit, which you can then invest in other things such as buying banners for behind the stage and gas and stuff like that. So
the idea is that this is duplicable by pretty much any band that actually, you know, has a good sound and wants to get out there.
Very much so.
How much of this is easily accessible in terms of documentation, in terms of your process?
So right now, people who are keeping up with the project, so you know, I'm writing a lot about what we're doing. My goal at the you know, the way I'd like to see it happen is Severed Fifth becomes successful and we start seeing this change happening. Mm-hmm. And then when that starts happening, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to give the book away for free that basically explains how all of this worked. So it will become a manual for how a band can do exactly the same thing. So I'm making a load of notes while this is all going on that will go into that book.
And it's probably just as important for us to know not only what you did right, but also what you did wrong. What's the biggest thing you've done wrong so far?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think the biggest thing I've done wrong so far was when I kicked it off in 2008. And then I released the first album, Denied by Rain, in 2008, and I thought, yeah, I can write a book at the same time. That's when I got the deal for The Art of Community. Yeah, I can move countries at the same time. I can get married at the same time. I've discovered that if you don't put enough time into this, then you won't be successful. Just having the online presence. I mean, as an example, we've got facebook.com/severedfifth. We've got twitter.com/severedfifth. Identica/severedfifth. Mm-hmm. We've got reverbnation.com/severedfifth. youtube.com/severedfifth. Maintaining all of these sites, making sure that all of your shows are on all of these sites is one such example. Having an email address, having a website, putting all the photos up on there. Just maintaining an online presence in itself is a pretty significant amount of work. Making sure that you can get flyers done for your shows. Just rehearsing. I mean, we rehearse 3 times a week. It's a lot of work to do a band and to try and do it right.
So like everything else, what you're saying is you look like you could kind of mix it in with everything else you're doing, but time-wise, it's just really required a much bigger commitment than you thought you had.
Yeah, and, at first I just didn't. I've been in bands before, but I didn't realize. For me, it's like this is my major project. I've not felt so excited and such an opportunity about change since I got into open source. When I first heard about open source when I was 17, back in 1997, 1998, when I first heard about that, I just thought, this is the way it's going to work. And that just got me completely obsessed about it. And I feel the same way about this. So, but it needs time. So I think that was definitely the biggest mistake that I made. I mean, there's lots of little things like, just lots of little things that I should have done. Like I should have got on MySpace earlier. I should have identified some areas of growth before I did. I should have got on YouTube earlier because video is your video is a big attraction for a lot of people.
Yeah, obviously MySpace today is not as relevant as it was a couple of years ago.
Well, it's bizarre. I mean, it isn't as relevant, but it's still huge for bands.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of people used to use MySpace as Facebook, for having their own profile. Mm-hmm. Everyone uses Facebook for that now, but there's still a huge amount of bands on MySpace. We use Facebook a lot as well. But all those social networks are really, really useful ways of helping to pull people in and get people excited.
The name Severed Fifth, I got to ask, where'd that come from?
I don't know. It was.
Who do we ask then?
Well, I was trying to think of a name for a band. I mean, my last band when I was in England before I moved over here was called Seraphidian, and it's a completely fictional word that was from Seraph, which is the order of angels, and Ophidian, which is the order of snakes, and we put it together, and it sounded pretty metal.
Yes.
And I wanted a term that was invented. I didn't want it to be called, kill or something.
Yes.
Or, brutal or something. So I just had this vision in my head of someone tearing the Fifth Amendment in half. So that's where the term Severed Fifth came from. But people have interpreted it in lots of different ways. And a lot of people seem to get it wrong and say that it was severed filth. Which is not the case. In fact, we had that printed on. We did a show on Saturday, and we had that printed on the ticket. It was Severed Filth. So,
wow, crazy. And I also, where I went is something about a fifth interval. But
yeah, a lot of people have thought that as well. The fifth interval in music.
So it doesn't have any meaning. It's just the name.
It's just a name, yeah. It's pretty easy to say, and it's pretty understandable. And I like the fact that people can interpret it in their own way as well, which is cool.
Great. It's like any good art form, which is like the interpretation's half the deal there. Yeah. And you resisted putting a heavy metal umlaut in there, though.
No heavy metal umlaut. No. Motley Crue have already done that.
And a Death Tongue and a whole bunch of other ones, yes.
Yeah.
Spinal Tap. All those. Good. Well, speaking of which, let's go ahead and pull another cut from